Most e-bike manufacturers have software to allow you to customize your motor. Most e-bike riders don't do it. And that includes me. I just want to turn on the bike and go for a ride. Except I changed my mind on that. Now that I've got a testing lab set up for these e-bikes, I can really see what's happening with the motor, and I can make changes to match exactly the kind of riding that I want to do. Turns out that making changes to your e-bike motor is a really good idea, and I'll show you why. I'm using my Trek that has a TQ motor in it, but this really applies, these ideas apply to any motor you have, so don't worry, you're going to learn something in this video. The first time I realized I really needed to make changes to my e-bike motor was when I tested this bike here, and you can see that test here. But what was happening was the way they set this motor up was not for my type of riding or my ability as a rider. It started to shut the motor down or leave it at one level just about the time I was getting into my stride. So you can see in these three graphs that, and each of these graphs are the low, medium, high setting, that the motor did not follow my power output. So you can see my power output going up in each case, but the motor power output was not because it reached its maximum very early on. In my case, I'd rather that motor follow me all the way up. So as I give it more power, it gives me more power. But to do that, I really needed to lower the assist level. Now I should explain that this is a mid-power e-bike, and it's got a small battery in it. I use this bike mostly for kind of mountain riding and fitness. I do have full power e-bikes in the garage, and I use those when I'm just blasting the trails. So the use case on this one is much more like a fitness type of e-bike. I will be doing tests on the full power bike with motor settings, and so you can watch those when they come in. Subscribe if you want to see those, and sign up for notifications. But this video, you'll still learn some things in this video that I learned. So here's what I want from the power of the motor on this bike. I want it to mean something. I want it to mean how long I can ride with the power of the motor. So if I want to go for a 5-hour ride, I want to have a setting for that. If I want to go for a 1.5-hour ride, I want to have a setting for that. So here's what I did. And this bike has a 360 watt-hour battery. I don't use a battery extender. I'm pretty comfortable just going with what has been given to me on this bike. I just want a little bit of assistance. So for a 5-hour ride, I probably average about 125 watts as a rider. That's specific to me. And for a 360 watt-hour battery, let's say the bike has an efficiency of about 80%, then I can calculate about how much power the bike should be giving me on average over that 5 hours before it runs out of battery. So if you do the math on a 360 watt-hour battery at about 80% efficiency, you realize that for 5 hours, you really can only put out an average of about 60 watts. So the motor provides me 60 watts average over that 5 hours. If it's providing me 60 watts and I'm usually putting out 125 during a ride like that, then the assistance level I want is about 50%. That's how the math works out. So using that same approach, I can do the math for an hour and a half and run the same numbers. I come up with something like 192 watts that I can get from the motor for an hour and a half. And if I'm putting out about 180 watts, which I think I can do for an hour and a half, then I want a assistance level of about 100%, and that should run me for about an hour and a half with this bike. And then for the third setting, I'm looking for something in between that'll give me 3 to 3.5 hours. So I'll set that at 75%. So here's the settings I used, and I went ahead and tested them. I also did a test and just maxed out everything. So it gave me the maximum assistance level and no limit on the power. And you'll notice in every case, I did not limit the power. I left it at 300, or I brought it up to 300 watts. So I never hit that ceiling. So when I first tested this bike, I used the readout on this bike, and it shows me the power output of the rider and the power output of the motor. But one thing it didn't tell me very accurately was the output of the power on the motor. For some reason, motor manufacturers must be giving us power numbers that are the power usage of the motor and not the actual power output, because in almost every case I've run these tests, I have not been able to get the max power output. that the motor manufacturer advertises. So here are these results. This is the test for the low power mode. I was never able to get it above about 125 watts. The power followed me all the way up there, which is exactly what I wanted to see happen. Torque curve on this motor is pretty flat. You can see that's around 10 Newton meters. And the assistance level, or the power multiplier, is somewhere around 50%, and that's where I had set it. When I tested my mid-power setting, I was able to get about 180 watts out of the motor. So that had an assistance level of 75%, and that's about what it showed. Started to creep up there at the top for some reason. And again, the power level followed me. It seemed to increase a little bit, accelerate a little bit, but the power level continued to follow me, and I never reached the maximum. Now the max setting I chose here looks like it was a little bit low. As you can see, I was only able to get it up to 200 watts, and it did follow me all the way up, but I never maxed the power out on the motor. The torque level, again, is relatively level, and it was about 20 Newton meters. But the power multiplier climbed a lot during that test. Still not sure what's going on there. So I went ahead and did the test, just full all-out open motor, giving me the full assistance of 200%. Interestingly, it didn't give me 200%. It gave me more than my other setting, but even though I had it set at 200%, it was giving me more like 115, 120%. So I'm not sure why that's the case. The multiplier seems to be the thing that's kind of off here, but it's having the effect I want. I got a lot more power out of the motor. I got it to the 250, and I got it to the 250 earlier on in cadence. And you kind of see the peak both for the multiplier, the torque, and the power all happening at about a cadence of 90 RPM. So all this lab testing is well and good, but what does it really mean on the trail? So I brought it out to a place I knew I could really put this thing to the test, and I recorded my power output. I recorded total power usage, and that was all based on the bike. Hopefully that's relatively accurate. I recorded my riding time and other various factors, and I learned a lot about my settings, but I learned some other things that I think you'll find interesting, and I'll share that towards the end. I am right alongside the road, right alongside a ridge near Nevada City in a place called Harmony Ridge. And there's a trail that runs down this ridge, which is a nice downhill. But the neat thing about it is it's got a really good switchback, maybe a dozen and a half switchbacks to get up that are all one sort of grade. And it's a great place for me to test out the different settings I've got on this TQ motor. Okay, I just came down the trail to Talon Show, and I'm going up a set of switchbacks. I'm not using any power on the bike, so just using regular given power on this run, and we'll time it and see how much power I'm using, compare it to the rest, get my workout in. Okay, that was about a 15-minute climb with no motor power, so now we're going to try out some different motor power levels. Okay, now I'm coming up the hill in my first level, level 1, and it's already feeling so much better. I go around this switchback, but coming down, didn't use much, so we'll see how much power I use going up. I was run 2 on level 1, and felt great because I had a little bit more power and got a little bit more speed, and I was able to get up through the switchbacks a lot easier and keep my cadence up, which I think helped me put out a little more power. So we'll see what the results look like. Okay, I'm on my third climb. I'm on level 2, which is feeling even better. And we'll see how this goes. Okay, that was level 2, and I shaved another minute of my time off that climb, as might be expected, and used a little bit more battery power. One of the problems I didn't foresee is it is a little bit crowded out here, and as you start to get more assist, you start catching people on analog bikes, and that's a little probably irritating for them when I keep coming up behind them, but we'll make it work. Okay, I'm on level 3 now, headed up, hitting the switchbacks. Had to get started, roll through the bottom pretty quick because a group of about 10 people down there. I wanted to try to pass them. I don't know if they're on e-bikes or not. So here we go. Okay, I ran up that hill with all 3 of my custom settings plus without any motor. Now I maxed it out to 200%. I'm not sure how much difference that's going to make. So I pretty much climbed that hill, I think, as fast as I could. Didn't cut much time on my last one, so we'll see how this one does. Gonna head down the hill and go up at 200%. Okay, so I'm gonna start heading up. This is on max, 200%. I'm gonna wait here a minute because it just went by me. There aren't any bikes, so I don't have to wait too long. Stay on your left. Thank you. I rode that kind of hard, so we'll see what max will do, but I kind of blew my time away. Used a lot of battery and made a good time. So we'll go back home and put all those numbers together and see what we can learn. So here are the results of the test. So battery usage is an obvious one. Didn't use any battery when I didn't have the motor on, and it went up with each setting. Cadence was interesting because in almost every case my cadence was somewhere around 77, except the high setting, which is an anomaly I'll mention here in a second. But when I didn't use the motor, my cadence was lower, and I attribute that to a relatively steep climb, not too steep, but steep enough that I couldn't get my cadence up in the lowest gear on the bike. And that's probably typical of a mountain bike ride. So you're grinding the gears a little bit more. But when you have a little bit of motor assistance, then you can get that cadence up. And in reality, that's kind of why I bought this bike. So anyhow, interesting there. The climb time you might expect goes down in each case, except that high mode. I think in the high mode, I had started getting enough assistance, I started to lose my motivation. And so for some reason, it's got a higher time there. Round trip time went down in every case, except that high case. Went down a lot in the high max case because I was really fired up to go as fast as I could. So even the downhill time was faster. And rider power was a really interesting one because this may be obvious to some of you, but you work just as hard when that darn motor is helping you. I mean, you just put more power in. So it did drop some because I think on the flats, it's kind of hard to really put a super amount of power in. And there were sort of flat sections or easy sections of that climb, but overall my average watt output and the average, the amount of exercise I got in each run was just about the same. So I could use that information then to calculate the estimated range for each of those settings. And recall, I was shooting for a time of 5 hours, 3.5, and 1.5. And on the eco mode and the mid mode, I hit right on the button, according to my calculations. In the high mode, it just wasn't high enough to use the battery. And as you recall, when I maxed it out to 200% on the app, it really didn't max it out, the assistance level to 200%, but it did give a lot more assistance in the lower end. And that was enough to really use a lot of battery and increase my ride speed, reduce my ride time, and it came out to exactly 1.5 hours. Calculated estimated ride time. So I now know what my settings need to be. So here are my official road less traveled settings for a TQ motor. Now it's given a 150-pound rider like myself. It's relatively fit. If you happen to be a heavier or a stronger rider, then you would want to reduce your assistance level because you're going to end up using the battery faster. But if you're a lighter rider or you're not as fit or you're not pushing it as hard, then you can up that assistance level. Now, if you don't have a TQ motor, I am going to be running tests on full power motors. I'm going to do the Shimano's first because that's what I have. And so be sure to subscribe if you want to see those. I learned a lot doing this test. I'm excited about riding this bike now and the new settings that I've got on it. I hope you learned something. Hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for the next one. I'll see you next time.